Welcome to Straight Painting. I'm your host Zach, and on this episode, we're going to take a look at the work of Florence McGillivray. Florence McGillivray was born in 1864 in Whitby, Ontario, and she worked as both a teacher and a professional artist in Whitby, Toronto, and Ottawa. If you'd like to learn more about her and see more of her work, I suggest you visit the Florence McGillivray Project website, the Canadian Art website, and the Hamilton Spectator article, Florence McGillivray Tamed Nature with a Brush. I'll leave links in the description box below if you're interested. McGillivray studied at the Central Ontario School of Art before moving to Paris in 1913. While in Montmartre, she was taught by Henri Matisse, who insisted she submit her painting Contentment to the Salon. She returned to Canada in 1914 and ended up settling in Toronto, and from there traveled to many of the same locations as the Group of Seven, though her Algonquin park was the Percé Rock on the Gaspé. The paintings of hers that have stood out to me all share a theme and seem to have all been painted in and around Whitby and Toronto. In 1916 and 1917, she visited with and became a mentor to Tom Thomson and shared compositional and palette theory advice that helped him to develop his style. In Winter at Rosebank, we find a colorful winter scene that still maintains the coolness of the season. A lone tree leans out from the bank as waves crash in on the shore, while the moon hangs in the overcast sky, shedding some light on the scene. This piece was painted in the Rouge River Beach and Marsh area on the border of Toronto and Pickering. It was known as Gattabogagong in Mohawk, which means River of Easy Entrance. This picture shows us a couple of things that jump out to me about McGillivray's style, and the first is how the colors of her palette show up throughout the piece, not just in their divided sections. The purple of the sky is hiding in the bark of the tree and the snow on the ground, and the red hues show up through both of these elements and in the wave crests. Her use of short, impressionistic strokes keeps the energy and movement of the waves intact and creates an element of tension for the potential for a landslide to pull the leaning tree down the bank. In Moon Magic, we have another shoreline scene, likely painted in Lake Ontario, and this time we are fully thrust into the darkness. We can make out some of the waves as they reflect the moon's light and crash into the spit of land jutting out into the lake. The blues of the sky and water tie together the two sections, with the darker blues in the sky and the tealer blues of the water helping us to make out the trees and land around us. The piece that I've chosen to make a study of today is Afterglow, which was painted by McGillivray in 1914. It shows us a grove of trees that was near her home in Whitby, and its composition reminds me of another famous arboreal painting, the Jack Pine. Both paintings focus on trees and sunrise, sunset as their subjects. Both have the weight of their compositions on the left side of the picture, and both are split into thirds, having a short foreground at the bottom, a muted middle section with hills in the center, and a strong gradation in light in the skies at the top. Now, a lot of compositions share these elements, but knowing that McGillivray did mentor Thomson, and that Thomson's picture was made in 1917, we can see how her style influenced his work as an artist. I chose this piece by McGillivray because it was the first of hers that I had seen. My visit to the National Gallery in Ottawa allowed me to meet H. Mabel May's work as well, and to view the Jack Pine up close. Across the room from the Jack Pine was Afterglow, and its similarities caught my eye. I also loved the use of the yellow for the sky and how the yellows carry through the piece into the greens and reds and even the grays of the trees themselves. So for my study, I'll want to focus on the gradations of yellows and greens to have differentiated hues in the final piece and to maintain the loose, plein air sketch feeling of her original. So how did we do? All right, we've got our finished card here, so let's do our standard review, make sure we met our goals before we put some top coat on it and put it into the deck to play against some friends with. The first thing that I wanted to do was to make sure that I had a good gradation in the yellows and the greens in this card to make sure that they don't mix together. The yellows up here look great. I was able to really boost that difference. However, the greens down here are a little too similar. Big reason for that is that I use primary blue and primary yellow to mix up my greens. So I just need to focus on paying attention to how much of each color I'm adding when I'm mixing to get out the desired color at the end that I want. And that's just something that I'll do by practice. In terms of the loose sketch feeling of it, I think we've maintained that. Keeping the line work and adding that in at the end that she had in her original piece was really good. Making sure that I did this in a similar sort of black color really helped it stand out and gives it that quick sketch sort of feeling to it. The other thing that I've noticed about doing these types of cards is that when I make these small impressionistic strokes, it doesn't look right to me in my head based on what I want the end result to look like. But that's simply, it doesn't look that different from the actual piece itself. It's just the way I perceive it and the way that I feel about using the size of brush, how much paint I have on it, how much pressure I apply when I make those strokes. So that's just a learning pit for me. But overall, I'm happy with this card. I'm going to be excited to draw it when I'm playing against friends, and I think that it's a really good piece. It was also really good practice for getting yellows, because if you've ever painted in yellow, you know that it is a nightmare because of how translucent it is. All right, now that we've got our completed card, it's time for our final takeaway as always, which is to remember that the effort you put in is more important than the perfection you achieve. And that's to say that the more you try, the better you'll get. You just have to try. I want to thank you for joining me this week. I had a lot of fun learning about the work of Florence McGillivray, as well as the impact that she had on Tom Thomson and the Group of Seven, and subsequently the entire history of Canadian painting. I hope that you've learned something as well along the way, and I hope that you'll join me again in 2 weeks' time when we'll take a look at another Canadian artist for another study. Until then, happy painting and peace.